Blue Archive is set in an imaginary society where all high school girls wield guns, and this makes them so powerful that they're now the government. In this anarcho-capitalist dystopia that's ruled only by student councils, private military contractors, and the girl with the biggest gun, we enter our protagonist, the only man, in a world that's solely inhabited by street gangs and these horrifying dog people. Wielding the power of an iPad, it's his job to become the strongest warlord by collecting girls like Pokemon, in a way that reminds me of all the dubious 2000s dating sims. Only difference is that your new favorite girl has a halo that boots in the morning, like a futuristic, furry-shaped neon light. So I welcome you to Blue Archive, which is actually not blue, or an archive, and might ultimately be just an excuse for me to fixate on more girls with halos. But don't call me out on that, okay? I've been playing Blue Archive infrequently for about a year now. Every time I boot the game, I'm met with a cutscene, where a maid shoves her feet directly to my face. And I'm also reminded how this character's personal story was basically just a collection of scenes, where the Sensei protagonist gaslights her into stepping on him. So Blue Archive is definitely a video game. Another routine I have is to visit this club I've joined, to relive my high school trauma. And there's only 2 people there, me and the club creator. I originally joined because the club name translates in my native language approximately to pee-pee. So both of us are in the joke, but we never speak, we just silently stare and judge each other in this virtual space. So again, peak video gaming. Now, you might have played other girls with guns type gacha, and you may ask, how does Blue Archive stand apart from the competition? And the answer is, by being extremely stupid. While the rest of the gun-focused games have a somewhat slow start, before turning into literary epics written by Hideo Kojima, or use that start to ponder some very deep and original questions, such as, if robots, actually, have emotions, and stuff. Blue Archive instead throws you in the middle of a gang war, and asks if you're bad enough dude to shoot these tiny girls who have stolen a fully functioning tank. Because of course they have, and it's just in another Tuesday in this dog person hellscape. Fast forward like 15 minutes and the main cast is already robbing a bank. There's the kind of distinct charm you only get from asking someone on meth to script your story. So what I'm roundaboutly saying is that the game starts instantly with some dorky fun, which you don't get from stories that try to take themselves a bit too seriously. As an added bonus, Blue Archive can be decently serious when it wants to, but there isn't really the need to bait you with edge, so you're not constantly feeling like you're wasting time until the game gets good. That's a positive stemming clearly from the love of the sport, in this strange mix of cute girls and guns. For example, when the game hits the mandatory beach arc, it also features tanks as a slice of life element, as the game knows an enlightened truth. Tanks are cute, and there doesn't need to be a ham-fisted excuse to feature them, literally everywhere. You just put them on the beach, where they belong. Another thing that impressed me in the beginning was the fact that the main cast have separate sprites with balaclavas, even though it's the kind of a detail that wasn't really necessary for a throwaway joke, and even though it just makes the characters look extra goofy, it's the kind of love that makes everything worth it. When it comes to more serious story arcs, heavy spoiler alert by the way, my favorite volume in the game is Volume 3, Eden Treaty, which kicks off as a spy drama, and a standoff between major political powers. As a teacher, you're tasked with finding a spy, which happens by tutoring a class featuring an exhibitionist, and things dynamically escalate into the Hindenburg disaster, which isn't even the actual climax of the arc, so you could say it's a wild ride. The third story arc is, by the way, also the best metaphor of the Balkans in all of media. All the tribalism and the deep rivalry that these groups and characters have, they seemingly exist in a space with no clear-cut answers, but then at the same time, for example, one of the early antagonists hates the other schools because she's just a racist. I could go into a proper video essay mode just to explain how refreshing it is to see a character who's just ontologically a bad person, but I won't do that, as I'm slightly afraid her horde of intense fanboys will just flay me alive. Maybe that says something about the ANCAP society we live in.
かっこいいでしょ。
In the third arc, you also have Hifumi, on her quest to dynamically become the true main character of the game, by just wrestling away the spotlight from the rest of the cast. Sorry, the designated App Store icon girl. And she holds such a kick-ass speech that it literally summons the sun, and ends up in a title drop, in the middle of the game, because she decided now was the time, and you're just living rent-free in her gacha anyway. After that, you're treated to tactical hobo rabbits, in an arc that taps into the masculine urge to own a squad of cute operators. And afterwards the cinematic final chapter, which ends nothing, as new plot is being unveiled as we speak. So, the ride truly never ends. There are, of course, some negatives to Blue Archive, which I need to mention in order to pretend I'm doing an actual review here. First of all, it's a gacha mobile game, and I'm the kind of a nasty boomer who thinks you shouldn't engage in microtransactions because they were all designed by Satan.
Sensei.
While Archive isn't that bad as gachas go, there's still the distinct undertone that the game expects you to gamble in order to see the characters in swimsuits, which is of course, the ethical product model. You might have also noticed how I haven't said anything about the actual gameplay yet, and there's a reason for that. Aside from being, in general, very light on gameplay elements, there's this seemingly polite decision to let you borrow the relevant characters in story whenever there's a combat encounter. While this might seem like a cool decision, in effect this means there's no actual challenge in the story at all, as the teams you're using are designed to beat the combat automatically. Up to the point where you meet this evil-looking motherfucker, and the game subtly informs it expects you to use your own level 1 shit-tier characters by gently banging your head against the wall, until the point the secret koans are mostly just descriptions on how your innards look when they're sprawled all over the floor. You think I'm exaggerating here, but I got clapped by this guy so hard that I don't really have the bones left in my body to joke about it. Anyway, add some hag characters in the game already, okay? I'm tired of asking. And I guess there's also the anime airing right now, which I tried to avoid up until this point. Look, I enjoy roasting an anime now and then, but poking fun at gacha adaptations on average is such a low-hanging fruit that I'd just rather fight this dude again. So I'm just going to say that there's nothing wrong with watching the show, and there's nothing wrong with enjoying this, especially if you really like the source material. But at the same time, there's nothing wrong with recognizing that it's one of those adaptations, where all the cool-looking action segments were spent on the opening animation, and outside that, the cast just kinda stands around, firing guns strictly from the classic front and side perspectives. I guess the anime might serve its purpose of attracting more players, so that might count as a success from a coldly calculating perspective, but outside that, there's a wealth of kinda honest B-tier life choices here, such as ditching the established soundtrack and playing the most generic stock audio samples instead, for reasons I can only assume boil down to some licensing issues. And also, I didn't want to rail on this heavily, but just look at this dude. Look, I get it. It's extremely difficult to design visuals to a character that's basically just a faceless self-insert avatar. So in a situation where everyone is going to have their own headcanon on how the protagonist looks like, going with the blandest possible look might be the safest choice. But I think we're again in the it's technically serviceable from a corporate perspective dimension with how this dude looks like. And I find this interesting, because there's already a completely valid character design from some of the spin-off manga, which I think reflects the small snippets we knew from the protagonist, like being overworked and sleep-deprived. So, you could have just used this design, okay? And maybe this is just a personal me thing, but I can't have been the only one to think the protagonist was one of these dog people too, right? I'm only half joking. He's never shown in the game, and every man in general is portrayed either as a dog or a robot. So why would Sensei get a free pass just for being the main character, right? Isn't he the real apparition here for being just a regular human being? Okay, so if this guy is supposed to represent me and be my self-insert, and not one of the horrifying dog people, I'm going to now properly fix him to be literally me. First, he needs to look like he's completely dead inside. Now that he has the 1,000-yard stare, we can move to style the hair. There we go. That's perfect. This man, he's literally me. Alright, so at the end of all this, is Blue Archive as a franchise worth getting into? Well, let's just say.